Welcome back to the podcast. In today's episode, I wanted to really dive into a lot of the conversations I've been having with a lot of you in my DMs and who have just kind of reached out after downloading some of my guides about why they're not seeing results or why they haven't seen results and how to actually make this year different and how to actually start seeing results. We've talked about a few different parts in how to get in the best shape of your life series, and I want to continue with that, but I also want to dive into the specific reasons as a transformation coach as why I see you not achieving results, why I see you staying stuck, and why the years kind of continue to be the same pattern, and how to get out of that cycle and what to be focusing on so you can actually start to see results and start to see your efforts pay off. Because that's the biggest frustration that I hear, and that is what I hear consistently around nutrition and training just being something that you are very consistent with and results just don't follow. And no matter what you kind of dabble in, feeling like the results stay the same, or you just don't see any more results. Even if you're in a calorie deficit or you're eating as little as possible, you're doing the training and you're doing all the right things and you just feel like you're stuck and you don't know what to do. So I kind of want to dive into what some of those are, what I see on a consistent basis, and how you can go about changing those and make this the year that you actually start to see the transformation and you stop staying stuck. So let's dive into it. First, I want to talk about why results are not happening and the biggest reason why I see results not happening. The first is that you really just don't have a clear plan or that you don't have clear systems and you are just kind of going into the week hoping that you're going to figure out that motivation is going to carry you through and that you're going to stay consistent with it. And the lack of systems that you have, whether that is in your training, if that is in what you're eating, if that is in your daily habits, build up over time. And consistency can be something that can feel like you're doing a lot of it and it can feel like a lot of effort. But in reality, when you look at the data and you look at what's actually happening, you're not doing the right things and you're just winging it because your motivation was high one day, then it was low another day, and it caused you to be on and off track where one day you were like, I hit my 10,000 steps, I hit my nutrition goal, and I hit my workouts. The next day, you couldn't hit half of those things, so you just didn't do them. And it leads you down a line of inconsistency where you can be perfect one week, and then the next week, it's hard for you to show up because you were showing up through motivation or you were showing up because you were inspired to get started. But once results kind of die down and reward is minimal, most people have a hard time staying consistent. If you have to go through a dry period where you're putting in a lot of work, you're working out really hard, and you're not seeing either physical change or the scale change immediately, it is a period that can be very defeating because you're moving into a phase of doing a lot of hard things and pushing yourself in an uncomfortable state to not seeing results. And therefore, the reward is minimal. And it makes you kind of think, well, why would I do this if there's no reward? And it makes you plan hop and bounce to the next thing and the next shiny object. Right now, I will say the most prevalent shiny object that I see is GLP-1s and peptides. These are things that promise a great reward very quickly, and therefore it causes you to get inspired by it and excited by it. And it's truly just the next quick fix because the reality is either you're going to be investing a lot in that down the line because it's going to be something that's kind of putting a band-aid over the issue. If you're overeating, if you're not eating nutritionally dense, if your nutrition is all over the place, if you're inconsistent with your nutrition, if you're not eating the right things, if you're not training properly, just because the weight changes because you're now on something that's supposed to change your weight does not mean that's a long-term thing. The second you get off to it, if you revert to your bad habits, the same thing will happen again. So it's not actually fixing the root cause. It's again a quick fix and a shiny object. And I have nothing against these. I will say that there is a place for them, and I know that there's a ton of research that peptides are super helpful, GLP-1s are super helpful, and there's a place for them for sure. But if you're just looking for a quick fix and you're just ready for the result to happen, it is something that is truly a quick fix. It is something that's going to get you a result, but it's not necessarily going to get you the result that you want. And it doesn't necessarily come without consequence. There are side effects to certain things that you take. There's an expense associated with it. And if you're not actually keeping up with a good training routine, you don't adjust your nutrition, you're not eating nutritionally dense, and you're using this as a way to get the results that you want, but you're not changing any lifestyle habits or the things that got you to where you're at, you're not actually going to solve the problem, and that problem will always continue to be there. So it's important that you're not just looking for the next shiny object and the next thing that's going to get you instant results, and almost sit with the fact that your inconsistency and your ability to not have systems and the things that you're doing on a consistent basis is the reason that you're falling short. But I also think is the reason that you're not seeing the results that you want, and you have to understand where that bad habit is stemming from, because everybody's is so different. I will say most people struggle with the nutrition side of things. That is where a lot of people get overwhelmed. They don't know what to eat. They don't know how much to eat. And it's almost challenging because it's an emotional thing. If you're in a deficit and you are feeling really restricted, or you are not eating some of your favorite foods and you're cutting out all your favorite foods, it's an emotional thing. And if you do it long term and you don't see enough results, you are likely to revert to old habits because it doesn't feel like it's worth the consequence or the sacrifice that you're making. And nutrition is something that's so emotional that a lot of people really struggle with when it comes to their plan. There's so much information about it, and there's so many different options. If you go on social media, I'm sure you have been bombarded with 1,000 different variations of how you should be eating, what you should be eating, if you're under eating, if you're overeating. And if you're just going around and doing all these shiny objects and looking at the random things and trying and putting in things in place, that's not a real system. And that's not something that's going to allow you to stay consistent. And therefore, you're not going to get results. You have to make sure that you have a system that you can lean on when it's a hard week, when it's a good week, and when it's a chaotic week, because every single one of those is going to probably pop up a couple times a month, if not multiple times a month. And if you are only showing up when you can be consistent, or you are only showing up when it's perfect and you can be perfect, you're going to be inconsistent, and you're going to be in a place where you're showing up 1 week out of the month, not 4 weeks out of the month. And that's going to drastically impede the amount of progress that you see. And it's going to make it feel like you're putting in a ton of effort, but you're not seeing results. And it's truly just because of a lack of system that's preventing you from being consistent. And I touched on this one inside of the inconsistencies, but it's trying a different thing the second that you see it, or trying to implement the shiny object syndrome. Like a lot of the trends that we've seen have been peptides, Pilates, GLP-1s, things that are really shiny object, because it promises a quick result, and it promises that this one thing is going to solve the problem that you've been dealing with for years. And it really doesn't address what is the root problem, what is the root bad habit or the root cause of why you're stuck and got you to where you are, and how can we fix that? Because generally for most people, it's not just one thing, but they're honing in on one thing, hoping that that's going to fix their problem. And it's just the one key solution that they haven't heard of yet, or they haven't tried yet. And that's going to solve all of their problems. But if it's not solving the bad habit that's causing you to either overeat, to not train properly, to be inconsistent week to week, then that's not going to solve your problem either. And I will say that everything that is kind of like trendy in the wellness and the fitness space is marketing at the end of the day. It doesn't mean that it doesn't work. It doesn't mean that it doesn't have its place, but it is marketed in a way to give you the end goal that you want, which is to be lean and toned. And if they can do it in a faster way than anybody else, then it's going to be marketed even heavier. And that's going to be more enticing to you, because we all want that instant gratification. We all want our efforts to be paid off as quickly as possible. And if we are just marketed in a way that if it's going to give you the solution that you've been trying for the last 10 years in the next 30 days, then it's going to feel like it's the best decision for you. But I want you to take a step back and really hear that if you are trying something and expecting to have something that's been in place, something that's been a problem or been a pain point for you for a year, 2 years, 10 years, and you've not been able to solve it, it's not going to go away in 30 days. It is something that is going to take time, because it took you 10 years to get to this point. It took you 5 years to get to this point where you're at currently, and you maybe don't feel your best, and your nutrition isn't its best, and your training's not its best, and therefore you're living in those consequences, and you can't just revert those in 30 days. And if you think about it from that perspective, it will help you kind of step away from the quick fixes that are being marketed to you. You didn't gain weight and change your life and become the version of yourself that doesn't feel their most confident in 30 days. That took time. It was built through habits. It was built through poor routines, and it was built through not having a good system that allowed you to be consistent. And just by changing one thing, trying a Pilates class, or switching your training to completely doing Pilates and removing strength training and going into a steep calorie deficit, it could be a good fix for you. But really, if you can't be consistent with it long term, and it's something that you're hoping that in the next 30 days, if you just really grind and you're able to do it really hard and restrict yourself, you'll get the best results. If you can't do it past those 30 days, it's not a good solution for you, and it's not a long-term solution. Therefore, it's not going to get you the results that you want. And then the last one is making decisions emotionally instead of through structure. I see this so much, especially with nutrition, but also just in like the winter months when motivation dies down and of January is coming around and that peak motivation from January 1 is kind of falling off. And now you're kind of in a place where you're now making decisions emotionally. You don't necessarily want to go to the gym. Motivation's not as high as it was. It's cold outside. It's hard to get outside. It's hard to focus on the healthier meals, and it's hard to focus on your meal plan when there's football games and there's parties. And we're making decisions out of emotions instead of structure. There's a lot of ways that you can structure your nutrition. It doesn't solely have to come from tracking macros, but it does need to come from a place of understanding. If you're guessing and there's no structure behind your nutrition, there's no way for you to know if your nutrition is aligned to your goals. And you need to have some system in place that is structured to allow you to see, are you in a deficit? Are you in a surplus? Are you eating enough protein? And is there structure behind your nutrition? Or is all the decisions you're making emotionally based on how you feel in that moment, how much energy you have, what your cravings are? Because if that's the case, then you're always going to find that it's hard to stay on track because your decisions are 1000% based on emotions. And your emotions aren't always the dictation of what's best for you. They're an emotional state that you're currently in, and your brain and your emotions are designed to get you into a place of comfort. You're going to go to your comfort zone, and that's not always the best decision for the long-term goal that you have. I'm sure you can relate to making a decision in an emotional state that maybe wasn't the best decision for you, but in the moment, it felt like the safest bet. And that's what will happen a lot of times when you choose not to go to the gym, or when you choose to have a comfort meal instead of sticking to your meal plan, or go out to eat and order takeout, because it makes you feel good in the moment, but it doesn't necessarily help you towards that longer goal. And long term, I think there's consequences of that. Sure, you'll feel good in the moment, but are you going to feel good in 2 hours by making that decision? And that's a good distinction to tell if that's a good decision to make and how to kind of get out of that state. So that's the 3 core areas that I see why results aren't happening on a frequent basis: is not having a clear system or a plan that you can follow consistently, following shiny objects or random things that you see online and any social media trends, and then making decisions emotionally instead of structured. And now I want to talk about some of the biggest mistakes that I see when this comes around, into why you're staying stuck and why it's so hard to get out of being stuck and to actually see the transformation. And this is coming from conversations that I have with people on a regular basis. The common thread of what I see people do and the mistakes that they make, as well as what we work through with some of my clients, and when we work through their transformations of where they get stuck and what kind of comes up as like bad habits. The first is you're going to be motivated to do the work this week, but have no plan. I see this one a lot. When motivation is high on a Sunday night, you're determined to make this week the best week of your life. This is going to be the turning point, and everything's going to change from here on out. But you don't go into it with a plan. You go into it with motivation, saying, I will make the right choices. I'm going to work out this week. I'm going to meal prep this week. I'm going to get all my steps in this week, and I'm going to be so productive. And then Monday morning happens, chaos starts the day. You start the day strong, and then as the day trickles on and it's super chaotic, it doesn't plan out like you thought it would in your head. And that's because you don't have a good outline, you don't have a good plan, and you have no structure for how you're going to make sure that these things actually happen. If you don't know what time you're working out, you don't know what you're wearing, you don't know what workouts you're going to do, you're setting yourself up for failure. Because what kind of structure is that you're going to be able to repeat that? And what kind of structure is that that's going to allow you to do that when you wake up and you're exhausted, you want to hit snooze and it's freezing outside, your car doesn't start, your pre-workout doesn't kick in like you thought, and the day is just more chaotic than you mentally planned or how you felt it would be when you were super motivated? That's no way to be consistent. There's something that's basically setting you up for failure, because it's only going to happen if it's a perfect day and it's a perfect situation. If there's any sort of chaos that's going to derail your day, you're more likely not to stick to the plan. The motivation is going to slowly start decreasing as the week goes on. Think about how high motivation is on Monday and how low it gets to maybe by Friday, especially if it's been challenging and you're just ready for the weekend. So that's not a good method, and that's a huge mistake I see with consistency and why it's so hard for plans to stick. The second is, I'll just try again tomorrow since I can't hit my goals this week. It's too chaotic. I have too many events. My family's in town. I'm just not going to do anything this week. We'll start fresh next week. If you were waiting for the perfect moment to start, you are making the decision that your goals aren't important now. First, I want you to kind of think about the fact that you have no guarantee that you'll ever have a tomorrow, right? There's absolutely no guarantee. There's no certainty in what's going to happen tomorrow, or what your life is going to look like tomorrow. You assuming that next week is going to be better, or that it's going to be more perfect, or it's going to go out to plan, or that you even just are going to be granted another week, is not going to set you up for success. You need to make the decision to start now in the imperfect moments, because more times than not, if you think about the experience that you lived through, most of it doesn't plan out exactly like we thought. Most of it doesn't go according to plan, and you are going to constantly run into something, whether it's a vacation, families visiting, you have events, you have a busy work week, you're really stressed, you have no time to focus on anything. There's always going to be something. And we're going to go through different phases, and there's going to be different journeys in your life. Maybe you're planning a wedding, maybe you are having a baby, you're starting a family, your career's taking off. There's always going to be something. Personal aspects of your life and other areas of your life are always going to come up. And if you are just pushing fitness and nutrition to the wayside, hoping that one day you're going to wake up, you're going to have so much motivation, your calendar is going to be clear, and you're going to be able to check everything off perfectly, you're never going to start. And you're going to constantly push this down the line to the point of feeling defeated because you just feel like it's never going to happen for you. And then you're going to have to quit your job, stop being a mom, and stop planning going to any events and social gatherings for this ever to happen for you. And I want you to get out of that mindset and start to believe that you have to learn how to take imperfect action before you're ready. You have to make a decision to start taking action and just get into motion and try and figure it out. But then you also need to start before you're ready. That it's not going to be something that is just going to be perfect and everything's going to just pan out perfectly and you're going to be able to stick to it just because it's the perfect time. It is truly a decision and a choice that where you are right now is just not where you want to be. And whatever you can do in the meantime, even if it's just giving 1%, is going to be worth it because eventually that will compound over time and that will end up with some sort of result. And it's not just about a perfect time. It's about making a decision that there's going to be habits that are going to be replaced that are keeping you stuck with better habits that are going to allow you to start seeing change no matter how slow it happens. And that's one of the biggest things that I see is just timeline and not taking action before you're ready because it's scary, because it's uncertain, and because other things haven't worked out. So you're just hoping that things are going to get less crazy in life and there's going to be a more perfect time to start. And the next is the on and off. And I see this a lot, especially during week routines and weekend routines of being really on track of it during the week. And then Thursday night rolls around and events start picking up Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You have a little bit different of a routine because work isn't going on and you're going to be doing some social outings and gatherings and everything kind of falls off track. So now you're in this really on track mindset Monday through Thursday. And then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you don't track anything. You don't worry about getting your steps in. You don't go to the gym. You miss your workouts. And Sunday rolls around and you start to kind of push towards getting back on track on Monday. And the best way to get results is consistency. If you're constantly finding yourself on track and then off track and then on track, it's going to put you in a place of inconsistency and not seeing consistent progress because you are giving yourselves ultimatums and you are giving yourself almost the mindset that some days are just not going to be perfect and therefore you're not going to show up at all. And then the days that are perfect, you will show up. And that's only going to be the time that you do show up and do your routine. And in reality, you need to have non-negotiables. You need to have structure that allows you to control certain aspects that even if it's not perfect, if you have dinner out, if you are going to an event, if there are certain things in your life that are uncontrollable or a little bit off routine, it doesn't derail your entire day and it doesn't derail all of your progress that you've started to make this week. It needs to be something that fits in. And a good example of this is, let's say you are going out on Friday and Saturday night and you know that you're not going to have any control over the food choices. You might be going to a football game. There's going to be a lot of snacks and you just think, okay, well, screw it. I'm going to be overeating anyways. So I'm just not going to worry about it. Instead of having the same breakfast that you would have during the week that's going to be high in protein and maybe lower in carbohydrates so you can save that for snacking later. Same with your lunch, making sure that before you head into the event that you have something that's high protein, you eat something high volume, you load up on your vegetables, you make sure you're hydrating before because now you've front loaded your nutrition in the beginning of the day. So if you get there and there's no protein and all you have is chips and guac and quesadillas and a bunch of different things that aren't necessarily going to help you reach your goals, you're not not overeating and overindulging because you've had enough food throughout the day that you're not showing up starved and cravings are through the roof and you just are making yourself have an impossible situation of making all of the healthy choices when you already know that you're just going to have cravings through the roof. Or you show up and you've had your protein, you've had your water, you're feeling well, you're not feeling off the charts your cravings aren't off the charts. You're not showing up super hungry where cravings are off the charts. And you're less likely to make bad decisions because you're controlling aspects that you can, even though you had no control over the food that was going to be at the event. Another thing is I always tell my clients, bring something that's a little bit healthier. Bring something that you know you're going to be able to eat, and make sure that you're focusing on your protein. You're eating something that you know is well balanced so that you can still enjoy the other foods, because it's not about restriction. It is about controlling what you can control. And as long as you lead with that mindset instead of falling on and off track of, if I can be perfect, I'll be on track. If I can't be perfect, then I'm just not going to worry about it and I'll start over tomorrow. You will be so much more consistent and you will be so much more likely to see results, because you are now not in this mindset that you have to be perfect in order to try, and you can have balance, and it's not about restriction that gets results. And that's a very big one that I know that a lot of people struggle with. And it's very common and easy to fall in that mindset because it leads you to an emotional state of feeling like, I'm just not going to worry about it because I just know that I'm not going to be able to succeed. I'm not going to be able to turn down those cookies. I'm not going to be able to turn down eating any sort of chips. And I want to be able to go to social gathering. You should be able to do that. And you should be able to still reach your goals. You just can't fall into falling off track completely and then not restarting until Monday. It needs to be an instant you get back on track. You make sure you set yourself up and control what you can before you go into it. It's going to drastically change the course in which you achieve results and how consistent you can be. So let's talk a little bit about what realistic results look like as well, because I know that it's so easy to fall into. I've been really consistent for 4 weeks and the scale hasn't moved and I haven't noticed my jeans fitting better. I haven't gone down a jean size and progress is just taking forever or longer than I thought. So I'm just going to try something else. And it causes us to plan hop. It causes us to second guess ourselves, and it causes us to really feel frustrated that the plan isn't working for us. So we move around a lot. If you were to look at true progression and not a quick fix, the reality of how that looks is the first 4 weeks is generally something where you're going to see internal changes. This is where you're going to notice sleep improvements, energy improvements, less hunger and less cravings, better digestion, less bloating, and just better energy overall. Most of the time, you're not going to see a drastic change in the scale. You're not going to drop 5 pounds, and you're not going to see that your clothes are necessarily fitting drastically better. And the reason for this is because, especially if you've been in an on and off cycle for a really long period of time, your body has always been used to kind of like the inconsistency, and it has adapted to not really knowing what's going to happen next. You're not in a consistent state and your body's not consistently headed towards a specific goal just yet. It's kind of learning and it's kind of still adapting. So you might have changes in your glycogen and your body's responding better because maybe your food is more balanced and it feels more energized, and it's making sure that your digestion is better. There's changes that's going to happen internally first, because your body's always going to prioritize you feeling your best and you being energized and operating at its best. It doesn't necessarily care if you have the least amount of body fat as possible. What it cares about is that it's going to be functioning and that it's going to be able to survive. So if you've been on and off for a really long period of time, maybe your glycogen stores have been crazy and you need to replenish those. So it's going to prioritize that, which is basically to make sure that you are recovering and that you are getting the energy that you need so that you can keep showing up. Maybe it's going to take your consistency, make sure your energy is better. Whatever it looks like, it's truly just a matter that your body is adapting internally first, because for you to be able to see fat loss and for you to be able to start building muscle mass, your body has to be in a metabolic state that is ready to do so. You can't just tell your body, I'm ready to lose body fat, if you've been calorically in a deficit for so long that it's already fighting for its life to make sure that everything is functioning. If you're having hormonal problems, you're having energy problems, you're not sleeping well, it's not going to prioritize fat loss just because you dropped your calories more. But you could start to notice once you get on the right plan that your energy picks up, your sleep is better, your hunger is more stable throughout the day, your cravings aren't as off the charts, and you're not craving as much food as you constantly were. And that's a good sign that we're heading in the right direction, regardless of if your body has responded with fat loss or building more muscle mass at that time. And the other aspect of that is it takes time for both of those things to occur, because like I said, your body's going to want to operate at a steady state where it feels safe. And if it's not feeling safe, it's not necessarily going to prioritize body fat loss if it's not ready to do so, or it's not metabolically available to. And it's not going to build muscle mass if you need nutrients nutrients in other places, or if you're not eating enough of the right foods that are going to allow you to build that muscle mass. But once you get on the right plan, you start to notice these internal shifts. In that first 4 weeks, you might notice, I'm sleeping better. My energy's better. My cravings are off the charts. I feel more stable throughout the day energy wise. Those are all good signs you're heading in the right direction and you're on the right plan. Then week 6 through 8 is where I usually tell people that you might notice some more noticeable changes in terms of losing a little body fat, scale might have gone down, water retention might be down, and you might even notice that clothes are fitting a little bit better because now we've been doing something for about 2 months and we've given our body enough time to consistently adapt to that, as well as shift our metabolism into a state that it's ready to adapt to the changes that we're making. Between week 8 and week 12 is where you will see most transformations start to actually be consistent, or where you'll start to see that your consistency is really paying off. And this is where people will actually start to notice as well, other than you. Usually weeks 8 through 10, you start to notice and you can tell your clothes are fitting better, the scale is moving, and you're starting to get excited. Around week 12 and on, that's when other people start to notice because now you've been consistent for about 3 months, and that's a long enough period of time for your body to shift into the metabolic state of losing fat and to building muscle mass, which both take time under tension, and both take consistency. So if you've not been consistent for 12 weeks and you've not been consistent on the right plan that has been getting you results, don't just throw it away just because 4 weeks you haven't started seeing drastic results. And I see this a lot when women are saying, I haven't lost 4 pounds in the last 4 weeks like I thought I would. That's not a normal period of time to lose that amount of weight, especially if you just started out. And if you want to start losing a pound of fat a week, you have to be eating at a deficit of 3,500 calories per week in order to do that. And if you're not being consistent at that, then you can't expect a pound to be falling off every single week. But then the other side of that is also your hormones are going to play a role in this. It is normal to see fluctuations in your weight between 2 to 8 pounds, especially as a female. So if you're on your period and you're frustrated because it's week 4 and you've noticed the scale has gone up, give it a week and see how your body responds, because you're more than likely holding on to water weight and it's a hormonal fluctuation. It's not a fat gain thing, and you don't need to throw your plan away just yet. You need to take into consideration all of these things before you just say, I've been working out really hard for 4 weeks and I'm not seeing progress, so I give up. Most changes do not happen realistically that fast, and it does take time, but it also takes structure, kind of like we talked about at the beginning. So if you're just bouncing from plan to plan, if your nutrition's all over the place, you only eat clean when you can, or you're on and off track with your nutrition, I wouldn't call that consistency yet. And I wouldn't say that your plan is going to get you the results that you want, because it's lacking clarity on what you need to be focusing on, and it's lacking structure on how it's going to be something that you can stay consistent with. The best plans and the plans that are going to get you the best results are ones that have clarity on what to focus on, have direction, so that you know when you wake up and every single week, no matter how hard your week is, what does my workouts look like this week? What is my progression in my workouts? When am I doing my workouts, and what does my split look like? Do I need to add cardio in there for fat loss? Do I have resistance training for building muscle mass? Do I have a good split that's going to allow me to actually show up with my work schedule? And how can I make it time effective so that I can be consistent? That's the structure and the direction that you need so you can be consistent for training. Same with your nutrition. How much are you eating? Are you eating at a caloric deficit? Are you eating at maintenance? Are you eating at a surplus? And what is it tied to your goal? How are you making changes? How is that tied to your bigger goal? Are you making changes week over week to make sure that you're energized, you're not falling into too deep of a deficit, that you're energizing your workouts, and that you're making sure that you're having enough nutrients to support recovery and build muscle mass? Are you training with cardio? Are you using your nutrition as a deficit to help you lose body fat? What is the structure behind your nutrition to help you reach that bigger goal? And do you have clarity on what you should be eating, how much you should be eating, and when you should be eating, so that that can happen and you can be consistent with it and you're not constantly second guessing if you're right on the right plan? Those are all important when it comes to being on the right plan so that you can be consistent, because if you are just throwing things at the wall and hoping that they stick, and then when the week gets hard and you can't be consistent, are you changing things up and plan hopping and looking for more information online and then second guessing yourself and then going and looking for more information online? Because if that's the case, it's more than likely hurting you, because you're lacking the direction of what you should be focused on and you have no structure in your plan to allow you to stay consistent. The best plan is going to be simple and repeatable so that you can be consistent, whether it's a good week, a bad week, or a chaotic week. And the more simple and the more structured you can be with it, and the more repeatable that it can be, the better the results long term. And what I want to leave you with today is reframing your mindset around what's going to get you the best results and how to get the best results this year. If you have been consistently trying to see results and you've consistently fallen short and you've found that you're stuck and you're not seeing results, what is it that is keeping you from seeing results? In my opinion, as a transformation coach, it's consistency, whether that is consistency inconsistency in your nutrition, your training, your daily habits, or maybe there's just bad habits that make you constantly go into a cycle of on and off track and you don't know what to focus on. And therefore, you're inconsistent. But the reason that you are inconsistent is because of your belief around thinking that results should happen instantly and that you should have instant gratification. If you cannot endure pain or discomfort for a long period of time without reward, you will likely not see the results that you want, because fitness and nutrition is something that should be a part of your life and should make you feel your best. But if you're looking for a transformation, it does require sacrifice, it does require challenge, and it does require consistency in order for change to happen. If you can't have consistency, if you can't challenge yourself and you can't have sacrifices to get the outcome that you want, you will likely not be able to stick with it long term. And therefore, you're going to constantly find yourself hopping from plan to plan because you're either not sure what to be doing, you're not seeing the results that you want, and your mindset is centered around how quickly you can get a reward and getting as much reward as possible for any amount of effort that you put forward. You need to get out of the mindset of believing that reward is just going to happen. Time under tension and consistency is your best friend for getting results. Doing things longer than you think to get the reward and doing them even when you don't want to, plus having some certain sacrifice in your plan. That's just the reality of it. If you want to lose weight, you have to sacrifice a little bit of comfort when it comes around food or a little bit of choices around food. It doesn't mean it's forever, but there is a short period of time that you might have to eat less than you want, or you might have to have less sweet treats than you like, or you might have to cut out some of your favorite drinks. You might not be able to go out to eat every single week and just mindlessly eat whatever you want. There is some sacrifice that you have to make in order to get into a caloric deficit. It's going to require structure, it's going to require clarity, and it's going to require consistency, which is generally going to come down to how repeatable is it? How consistent can you be? And is there sacrifice involved that's challenging you? If not, then it's probably not going to get you the outcome that you want. And there's something wrong structurally with your plan that's preventing you from being consistent and preventing you from looking at the long-term goal and only looking at the rewards. Trying to reframe your mindset around the fact that if you are focused on a bigger goal, if you want something to happen that's going to be a drastic change, if you know that it's affecting you mentally, it's affecting you emotionally, and you just don't feel your best self, it's worth the sacrifice and it's worth the hard work and the challenge, because I think that being stuck in a place where you're not confident, where you don't feel your best, where you don't show up as your best is hard, and it's not a good place to be. And doing the work and putting sacrifice in and showing up even when you don't want to is hard as well. So it's a matter of choosing your heart and choosing that sometimes reward isn't going to happen as quickly as possible, but you got to stick with the plan either way and make sure that you're showing up consistently for yourself so that you can reach that goal. If you want help with this, I have a free guide. I mentioned it a lot in the podcast. I've revamped it a few times just to make sure that it answers a lot of the questions and it gives you what you need to figure out why you're stuck, why you're not seeing results. That's linked down below. It is the transformation roadmap that I have. I have a free guide down there. It helps you kind of work through a scorecard and a checklist to identify why you're stuck and why you may not be seeing the results that you want. So that's linked down below in the description in the show notes. You can grab that. It's completely free. And I hope it's a helpful tool for you, kind of like working through what area you need to be focusing on and where your consistency or lack thereof is coming from. I also have information on ways that you can work with me if that's something that you're looking for support with. I have a wait list for one-on-one coaching, and then I have other options as well on ways that we can work together if you're looking for support. But I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I will talk to you next week in the next episode.